And thank you for this. We have a lot of people online.
Recording in progress.
There's a recording going, so I need to make sure that everyone who's online, we need to be able to see your first and last name online. I see iPhone, for instance. That won't work for us. We'll have to, everyone else, I can see their first and last names. So, good. So, what we have planned here this evening is about a 20-minute presentation that I'd like you all to listen to, that I'll be delivering with the help of these slides. And then there'll be a comment period following that. And this presentation will be available online once we're done with tonight's meeting. And we'll probably also be able to have some notes and things to add to it. We're going to try something this evening. Many of you maybe have been to meetings where there's been a thing called a parking lot. And that just simply means that because of the nature of this meeting tonight, it's possible that all sorts of questions are going to come up in all sorts of ways that we won't necessarily have answers to. So to make sure that it's not as if we want to try to avoid answering anything, we want to make sure everything gets answered. If there's a question that we simply can't address this evening, we'll put it in the parking lot and make sure that we get an answer to people for that. So that's what these pieces of paper are for. There are bathrooms out in the hallway. Feel free to leave at any time, of course. We're going to ask that during the course of the meeting this evening that we use some of our friendly normal protocols, and we're asking for civility and respect as we talk with one another, and just make sure that we're all feeling that this is an idea for being able to share. When it comes time for the community to respond, we'll give every person 3 minutes to say what they have to say, and then that will go into the recording that BCTV is making, and we're running this as a Zoom, so there are a lot of people online as well. Let's see now, I probably should check every now and then. I don't know how I'm going to check to see whether or not people are waiting to come in, but we'll figure that out in a minute. All right, so we're going to talk this evening about a concept called an asset management program. A former name for that we're all pretty familiar with in Guilford here is the capital investment plan. And we're going to talk about why we're proposing the notion of an asset management program. So can we go to the next slide? Let's see.
There we go. So that was your rules for procedure slide.
Okay, so here we're talking about why we're here this evening. We're going to hear an overview of this asset management program, process and definitions. We hope to respectfully share ideas, and we want to listen to the community's input here. This meeting is not a presentation or a financial report. There aren't going to be hard numbers. The plan is not even a thing yet. In any kind of real way, as far as having numbers associated with it. And we're going to, the best of our ability, avoid the discussion about past issues, because we know we've learned a lot in the last 5 years of our capital investment program. And we know that there are lots of issues that people in our community have raised about what has worked and what has not worked. We feel pretty up to speed on that. And when I say we, I want to be really clear this evening that I'm not talking on behalf of the Selectboard. The Selectboard has not talked about any of this at all. Our only opportunity to work together as the Selectboard is when we're in meetings together. So you all would have heard about this already if the Selectboard had heard about it. So I've been having the great pleasure of working with our staff to put these thoughts together, and all of this is coming as a recommendation finally to the board, to the Select Board. So we're here to acknowledge that this is part of the town's business, and it's big. This planning process is big and it's complicated, and we've learned a lot in the last 5 years. But we also want to acknowledge that this recommendation, these ideas that we're going to be put out here this evening, have nothing to do with increasing taxes for our residents. The only time that the select board can make any kinds of changes in the tax rate is if we ask the public to do that. That's not happening tonight. We understand the boundaries. We think we understand the financial fences and boxes that are sitting here that we have to work with. We'll go through some of those tonight. And I want to just be very clear that this is just mostly a discussion about how to move forward. We want to look to the future, and so let's go on to the next slide. I'd like to thank Erica and Ellie for their engagement with this process, and Sheila as well. All three of them, we've done a lot of thinking about all this. What we want to start with this evening is, if you look up here on the screen, you see that there's a yellow circle in the middle. That's a Venn diagram way of describing what our capital improvement program has dealt with for the last 5 years. You can read buildings, library, town office, museum, town garages, there's highway equipment, bridges, and culverts. In fact, Guilford has more assets than are arranged in our capital investment, in the old capital investment program. So in our looking at finances and looking at things, we've discovered that we have more going on than just the capital investment program. So to have a capital investment program plan that felt something like the fiscal year 18 to 23 plan wouldn't cut it. We need a bigger plan. We need a bigger construct. And what we came to realize is that Guilford has a number of assets. 5 years ago, there was a plan, a capital needs assessment done about all the various kinds of issues and buildings, resources that we have in our town. It's no longer a need anymore to name those and get them on a list or figure out what they need from day to day. It's a matter of managing these assets as the town goes forward. And that takes time, energy, and money, and a lot of input from a lot of people. So that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. All right, so I want to just acknowledge that in the yellow, many of the town plan projects that were slated in the fiscal year 18 to 23 project were actually done, and some were not. And we're very well aware because we can read the plans and see what was done, what wasn't done. Also, community members are very concerned about these issues, rightfully, and bringing them forward. So what we're going to be talking about this evening is trying to get as global a look at this as we possibly can so that we can really undertake the broadest form of asset management. All right, so we're looking for stability. We're taking a step into maturity here. It's no longer just naming the things we have, but it's taking those things and managing them into the future. And that's one of the things that we have to do. We also want to acknowledge that Guilford assets change.
He was shooting through the roof.
Boom. Guilford assets are changing. They need updating.
The family knows how it ended.
Let's see here.
I'm like,
Okay, you can see that? All right. Okay, good. Sorry. It sounds like someone's television almost, too. All right.
multitasking.
Yeah.
not happening here.
Let's look through on the next slide. We'll take a few pictures and you can see a few things. These are some of the assets that we have in Guilford right now. These are the buildings that the town of Guilford owns, and each of these buildings has a very long list of inventory issues.
We're doomed to lose, and we're not about to lose. Tom Yalmas, NBC.
All right. Not arguing with somebody. Yeah. Okay, so each of these buildings has a big long list of inventory items inside of it that need to be reviewed on a regular basis. Let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, I think next we'll see. Whoops, I think I went too far. Well, right in the middle there, there's,
There
there
we
it is.
go. Good
We
stuff.
have highway equipment, a lot of highway equipment that's been listed in our improvement plan. We can go forward then to the bridges and culverts. Maybe. Yeah. Did you know that culverts to be listed on our capital improvement plan are culverts that are 6 feet tall or greater? Small culverts are just dealt with by Danny and the team on a very regular basis, but the larger culverts are actually, are generally tend to be.
A partial gag order in today's. Laura Jarrett joins us. Laura, the judge restricted some.
Tell who that is.
That's how she can ask everyone to mute.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Peter. Let's just make sure, is everyone who's on the call, if you can make sure that you're muted, that would be very helpful. We have a television that seems to be coming in now and then. I don't know where, I can't see where it's coming from. All right, and then these are other assets that are not listed in our capital plan for the last 5 years. The Green River Covered Bridge, although it's a bridge, it's a very special kind of bridge, and historically, it has a different timeline, a different way into our Guilford thinking than the capital improvement plan. The Algiers water line and the town highways are also not part of the current improvement plan. So our goal is to get a more global look at all of these and see if we can get a hold of how all these fit together. So let's go on to the next slide. So here's a schematic to describe how we're proposing that we view and work through our asset management program. If we develop this idea of an asset management program, we take an inventory of every single asset that we have, and there's a building has a long inventory. Smaller things like the covered bridge is going to have a smaller inventory. Each of those inventories, there are groups of anticipated needs that will rise up on a schedule. They will appear as needs. We will then ask that we estimate a cost. It doesn't have to be done through a formal process yet, but we want to know what it's going to cost us. And then if the anticipated need is strong enough, we have an estimated cost, we'll assign it to a fiscal year in the plan going forward. The idea here is that this will be a rolling plan, which the old plan was, but our dream is to then work with the bottom three circles here. If you think of the top circles as planning, the part of how we're going to move from a planning point of view, then we slide down to the implementation here. And every single project that moves into our program will have a worksheet that will describe the provenance of the plan. It will describe which revenues are supporting the program. And one thing that's really, we all need to understand here in Guilford, I've learned a lot doing this process, is that a single project may use funds from several different sources. So our capital improvement reserve, or our capital reserve, is not the only thing that's used to fund various projects in town. And this is where it can get really complicated. And when I say complicated, it's not because anyone's trying to do any tricks. It just is complicated. So sometimes, say for instance, a bridge might use some of a reserve that we as a town have set aside to go toward a bridge repair. We also might get a grant for that. And then in addition, that grant might have a matching requirement that we might use a different source of funding in order to meet that match. So that project alone has 3 different sources of funding. So it's not like a simple checkbook in your house. You can't just look and see what was the expense, where'd the money come from and go out. It's complicated. And every one of those, in that one instance, all of those issues have to be accounted in our financial accounting programs. And if you take on 30 to 100 of those projects every single year, you can imagine how complicated it can get. So we will have a project worksheet that will be used primarily as a tracking document. And that tracking document will then allow us to begin to implement the program. All the projects that we undertake in our town are overseen by our staff. So clearly, like the select board regularly deals with issues that Dan brings forward for us to talk about roads or talk about, we just in the last meeting, we just purchased a new truck. Gave authorization to purchase a new truck after a process he'd gone through. Grader, thank you. Grader, yes, it was a grader. Then the final bit of this program would be an asset management report that would come out every single year. And essentially what that would be is a compilation of all of those project sheets that would delineate what all we've done in that year, what the total amount was, and what sources of funds were used, so we can all get a picture. It's not going to explain every single thing from a document like this, we imagine, but you're going to begin to understand that we're using lots of different sources for funds as we go forward. Let's go to the next slide. I want to just say that all of this work, all of this thinking, all of this work is based on a lot of work that's already gone before us. Here's a list of policies, procedures, goals. All of these are documents that exist right now. Every one of these documents is on our website right now. So anyone could click any one of these things and see how it is that we approach issues like how to purchase something of a major expense, or what are our goals as we're trying to move forward with this management plan. We have the town plan that helps guide us. So we're asking our staff to have a pretty deep knowledge of all of these policies and an understanding of how they work. And they all interrelate, and the interrelationships here are what are helping us to move this whole thing forward. Again, it's not one single thing, one single idea that's in one place that will guide everything. It's a combination of many things. Let's go to the next slide.
Damage, we tried that instead.
So here's just an example, a set of funds that are available for us in Guilford right now to use for funding projects. If you look, there's a line kind of in the middle there, above the line. Those are all funds that Guilford, in its foresight, has set up to deal with issues like our capital fund, our bridge fund, the Green River Covered Bridge Fund. We have the general budget, the general reserve, the highway budget, the highway reserve, and there's this $175,000 bond that will one day go for a specific project that requires a town vote. All of those represent decisions that the voters of Guilford have made as a town to move us into the future and being able to manage all of our assets. It's not to say that all of those deal with all of our assets. Parts of every one of those deal with parts of all of our assets. It's a complicated mix. Below the line are examples of funds that come to Guilford or have the potential for coming to Guilford in support of our capital improvements. And so that, for instance, ARPA funds, or there are community development grants, state highway grants. We're pretty much in line with getting highway grant support for a lot of the highway work that we do here in town. There are other grants that work as readily as those highway grants that we in Guilford aren't so practiced at getting. That's a place for us to begin looking that would support the above line funds. It's an opportunity for us to look. Capital financing. So there are a number of non-Guilford voted tools that are available for us to use for the capital funds. All right. So let's go on to the next. Everybody with me so far?
What's the Act 64 fund? What is the acronym?
Act 64.
Act 64 is about clean water, and so,
Okay.
yeah, it's a clean water fund, and the MRGP is municipal roadway general permit, which ties into Act 64.
Okay.
All right, so we're just gonna show you an example of a number of these. Again, these are the assets that we are currently looking at. We've been managing over the last 5 years in various ways. So take, for instance, the town garage. It says sample all across because it's not meant to be representative. If you were to sit and read every one of those, and we're not gonna give you time to do that, it's not necessary for you to do all of those, but to get a sense. The green items are the items that are in our purview for this fiscal year. These are improvements that we're planning and management issues that we're dealing with this year. You'll see a number of green items over the course of the next slides. The yellow ones are items that are in the inventory, they're in the list, they're on the docket, they're in our mind. They will become green items in future years. And they each have years assigned to them, and that can be updated and upgraded and changed, flexed, whatever. And in the gray, you will see as we go through these are the parts of the capital improvement plan that have been completed. They're examples. It's not meant to be complete, but to give you an idea. So this is the town garage. Things like fireproofing, oil heater, expansion tank, and the roof for this year. Let's go on. Here's the library. So we have a number, there's a list of, looks like about 8 items for this year. None of them is huge. They'll fit within the plan, we believe. And then the yellow is items that we're planning to look at for the next year. And then the gray are things that have been accomplished in the last 5 years. Let's go on. The museum. We've heard a fair amount from some people in town that nothing's happened at the museum, but according to our own reporting, we can see in our own recordings, our records, we can see that in fact, the gray area here, there have been a number of things that have been done at the museum, and there are still some things that need to be done, and they're in this fiscal year, and then we have some things that will be looked at for the next year. Also, the museum has an ARPA grant an ARPA request into the select board right now that we'll be addressing in the next while. So that's a place that perhaps some of these issues, if it's awarded, some of these issues would get addressed via those ARPA dollars and not via Guilford tax dollars, potentially. All right, let's go on. The town office. We just got a new door between two rooms. That's there on the green. The renovation project that happened in 2019, and there's nothing new that we're anticipating needing coming in the yellow area for the town office. Let's go ahead. Here's bridges. These are most of the bridges that we have, and these are just under constant review by the highway crew. We can see that there are 3 of them that are going to be dealt with this year, either have been done already or will be done this year. And then we have 4 more that we'll be looking at in the next fiscal year or soon after. And these, the gray then are the ones we've done in the last 5 years. Again, samples, not the total picture. Let's move on. Culverts, similar idea. There's a culvert at Slate Rock Road that is on the docket for this year. We have 3 more for next year, and there are some others that have been done in the last while. Highway equipment. All right, so here we go. We just signed off on the grader. It's not, the dollars aren't there, but we just signed off on it at the last select board meeting. And then the gray are all the things that we've purchased in the last 5 years. And that list is quite a bit longer than that, the actual list. All right. And then we haven't even begun to deal with this kind of asset list for the Green River Covered Bridge, the Algiers water system, or the town highways at this point. But they will have the same kind of overview in this plan, in this program, if we move in that direction. Okay, let's keep going. So that's hard to read. People have asked, how does a project get onto the list? First of all, it has to be in the inventory. Second, it needs to meet a number of guidelines. And these 6 right here are taken right out of policy that we already work with. There's no reason to change it. There's no reason to adjust it. It has to do with the fact of whether or not it meets or fulfills the strategic objective of the select board. and the town plan, whether it's under federal mandate, we sometimes get federal mandate issues that we have to address, whether it will eliminate a known safety hazard, whether it will maintain and improve the delivery of public services to the majority of the population, whether it will improve the quality of existing infrastructure, and whether state and federal funds are available to assist in funding the project. Now, this doesn't mean that that's the only way something gets on the list. This is just some of the guiding principles that move things up, give them some urgency on our list. Okay, let's go ahead. Here's this famous project worksheet. So you can see, and these will be public records for anybody to see, I think, once we're learning about that. It basically, you can see, it tracks revenues and it tracks expenses. And that's incredibly important because as we've discovered, looking back at some of the projects that have been done in the last 5 years, we cannot find exactly where things are and how things moved because of the way things were tracked. So this device is going to help us really figure out and be able to keep track of all and bring consistency to the tracking that we're trying to do financially. So it will name the project, it will track the revenues, we'll be able to keep track of the timeline on this, and then if there are excess revenues, there will be a description of what happened to those, a line, a track you can follow where those dollars went for a particular project. All right, shall we move ahead? Once again, here's that program that the staff is recommending that you've seen this. We have an inventory, lots of inventories. We chart the anticipated needs, which we've sort of been doing over the last 5 years. Some things have fallen off the rails, but we hope to be able to anticipate those needs with the help of the folks who are involved with these various different assets. We'll gain estimated costs, which will help us figure out whether or not we can balance things given the resources we have, and then things would get assigned to a fiscal year. Then comes that project worksheet, then the project gets implemented, and then all of that together fits into an asset management report on an annual basis that we, Guilford citizens, would be able to see. All right, let's go ahead. I think I will say also that what the plan would look like, this just is a beautiful example of what a little report could look like, that we anticipate that this would go in the town meeting report. It would be just part of that report. And that at the same time we have a look backward at what we just did in the last fiscal year, we should be able to chart what we're anticipating, proposing to see of projects that we'll be able to accomplish in the next year. And those would all have met all these guidelines and all those processes we're talking about, so that the town folks would be able to understand that we only have certain numbers of resources we can use, and that's why the proposed projects look like they do. That's why the size of them. There may be needs that feel great to any of us about certain parts of the projects in the town, but we're obviously going to be weighing many things as we make the decisions about what we can handle going forward. Next slide. So just to say it, here's the process that the staff and the select board will go through now annually on a regular basis. We're going to be looking at documents, lots of reports, lots of old documents, policies, procedures. We'll need to develop a legal and accounting review of all the work that we've done, whether or not everything's above board, whether or not everything's in the right order, whether it's every penny's docketed in the right place. Then we will ask each of the assets to review with us and help us understand what's coming so we can anticipate. Then we will be able to the staff will develop an asset management annual plan that then the select board would adopt. And then as things get implemented and done, we would see the annual report every year. And then we would start that process over again. It becomes a sort of budgeting process in the end. It's kind of what this really is. All right, I think we can move ahead. Thank you. So, there's just so much to say and so much to think about and talk about, but it feels to us, as we've talked through this and talked with other people about this, experts, accountants, various folks, it feels like this is a system that could begin to work in Guilford. I think the focus we need to change, this is me speaking now, the focus we in Guilford need to change is from guarding a set of dollars in a certain way, but instead charting our assets. We need to be good custodians and guardians for the assets of our community. We already have lots of tools so that we can protect those assets going into the future. And so this is a way, this program, we hope, is a way to begin to think about those assets and how we can protect them and move them into the future well. So at this moment, we'd like to turn it open to the public and see if there are any comments anybody has. I'll make notes of things and we'll try to write things down. We may not catch everything, but we'll do our best. Yes?
Do you want me to do the notes so you can
Yeah.
do the conversation?
Thank you. That's great. Good. Separate. It'd be good if we could also give a person's name. What we'd like to do, if people have comments, we'd like to have your name as well as an abbreviated comment, right? In case we didn't get it right, we can come back and find out what you were talking about. Does that make sense? Yeah. Does this all make sense to people? Yeah, seem like it could work? Are there places that it might not work? Are there bugs in it that you see right away? Are there opportunities that we should know about? Comments?
So, thank you for this. I'm Sarah Coffey, live on Fitch Road. It's really interesting to see how you're thinking and how things work in town. I had one question and I had two questions. One is, where does the Guilford Fire Department capital projects fit within? I noticed in that the initial slide with the yellow circle and the green circle, because I believe in town meeting every year we appropriate a certain amount of money for the fire department that goes into a capital fund. But maybe that's general fund, the equivalent of general fund dollars? We purposely left the fire department out because we didn't have enough of the right answers in the road. Okay.
There are some assets, there are some issues where the town definitely covers, for instance, some of the fire department's insurance issues. They pay us back for that. So I think we haven't looked deeply enough to that, but it's possible. I think it's fair to say that some of the assets, as we've been talking, that there are still other assets in our community that we haven't even really fully grabbed a hold of yet. That might be one.
So,
I was gonna say, can I add to that?
Yes.
So the fire department is also.
Could you speak up, please? I mean, there's all this background noise.
The fire department is also its own organization.
right.
And its reports to the town regarding its expenses and revenues. So there's a separateness to the fire department. It is not owned by the town of Guilford, which these other assets are.
That was the kind of exactly, you answered my question, I think. And every year we appropriate a certain amount of money that's for their capital funds. So the second question is, and I guess can you hear me okay? I have my back towards people. Is that I know I sit in the transportation committee, and there's money that comes to the town. It's a formula fund for the roads and just the municipal highway funds. But there are also all these other grant opportunities, which are really pretty terrific because the state would provide typically 80% and cover 80% of a project, and the town would cover 20%. There's somewhere it's what we call a 90-10 split rather than an 80-20 split. And so my question is more about how is this plan seeking to address planning for that? Because when I see that there's only $60,000 and I see that there's one of the bridges is 1.7 million, even if you were to get the 80% to match that, that's not actually enough money for that bridge project. So I'm just curious, is this kind of a tool that you're hoping to use to kind of map those things out? Because honestly, when we get this book in our committee, it's called the White Book, and it's about this thick. And I look for projects that are in my district outside, and there are not many projects from Guilford there were none this year. And all of us are looking for our town. So I'm just encouraging, there are needs of the town that the townspeople and the staff have identified, and there are some resources, and I just want to make sure that our town is leveraging those resources in a smart way. So is that what you're hoping to do with this tool? In one of the ways?
Yes, a couple of things to say about your comments. yes, we definitely know that there are more opportunities out there that we're not currently engaged with. There are ways that we're beginning to think about that. We've set aside hopefully some opportunities to work with the Wyndham Regional Commission on developing grant writing so that we can learn more as a community more about that, with other communities, learn about what some of the possibilities are. The other thing that I want to say is that even though we might get a grant for that $1.7 million project, 60,000, but there's a reserve with that's just an amount that we set aside every year, then there's a reserve. So not to say that would take care of it either, but it's not only $60,000.
And I don't want to focus on that one
Yeah.
bridge, but
Yeah.
is the idea that you could build up someone to be
Yes.
putting
Yes.
aside to
Yeah.
leverage?
Yeah.
Sure, thank you.
And again, looking at many different resources
Right.
that might go towards one project. So, yeah, tapping you and saying, okay, what's available up there?
Yeah. We're not there, we're not doing it yet, but it's definitely in our minds. Needs to be in our minds. Yeah. Rick?
Rick Zamor, can you explain the process by which you decide how much to put into the reserve funds?
That's all been set. Oh, wait a second. Sheila might be able to answer this the best of anybody. Sheila?
So originally, many years ago, the town put in $250,000 a year. And more recently, the town has appropriated $225,000 into the capital. Are you talking about the capital fund or the reserve fund?
Either or both.
Okay, so into the reserve fund, it's a town vote every year, into the capital fund. The reserve fund is any funds that are left over through the end of the budget year that the fiscal audit describes as excess revenues. That goes into the general reserve fund.
And that's all articulated by policy. It's not a decision made each year about how much of it's going to go here or there. It's just as Sheila describes, it's through policy.
And it's also voted on at every town meeting.
As
Not
a
the
budget
reserve fund,
process.
Shelley,
Yes.
not the reserve, not the
Not the
general
reserve?
reserve fund. That is only after the financial audit is completed,
After it's
and there's
finished.
some funds
Yeah.
and that line is always blank on the budget, because we never know if there's gonna be an excess.
But the capital fund
The
is
capital
voted on.
fund, yes.
And the 60,000 that goes to the
Bridge.
bridge
Yes.
fund.
Those
Yeah.
are voted on each year,
Right.
but the reserve funds are not. Yes,
Yeah.
because those are the result of a previous year's work. Yeah.
carry
forward.
I'm still learning too.
Yeah, we're all still learning. But, yes, Steve.
Steve Lemke, Green River Road. Zon, I sort of lost track of how much of this plan has been done in the past and how much of what you're presenting tonight is new.
Okay, I think I think the way we're trying to describe it is that the old plan is finished, because the idea of the plan as it had been set up was that it would be a rolling plan. However, it has not rolled very efficiently or very well in the last while. So we're starting again, as it were. But I would say that the fundamental principles of the plan of developing the inventories are there, developing assessments, assigning years, and then looking at things and evaluating. The piece I think that's going to be the most different is actually a piece that Sheila developed, which is that project sheet. That's going to help us track and then be able to report to the community, which is the bugaboo that has been our problem in the past. We haven't been able to effectively report well enough to the community what's going on, because we haven't been able to track well enough. And so we're trying to tighten that up so that we can get better at doing that. And then that should make it, my dream is that by doing that kind of tracking, and then a couple of years of us practicing reporting and proposing next year's, we'll develop a kind of community trust about this process as we go along. That's what I think will happen, what should begin to happen.
And it's a rolling plan, not a 5-year plan.
Yes, it's a rolling plan. So every year, what you see, like for instance, in March, you'll see, here's what we propose for the next year. That's part of the rolling plan that we're making here again, and let's keep it rolling. So all that all the yellow that you saw is stuff that's rising up and may not make it into next year's plan, but may make it into a third or fourth year down the road kind of plan. Yes, Connie.
I have just some very simple questions.
Connie Burton.
I'm Connie Burton, Weatherhead Hollow Road. So the big report that was done back in 2018, I believe, is that just not being used, or does that have useful information in it?
I think you might be talking about the capital needs assessment.
Yes.
Okay, that report is fundamental to this work, but it doesn't need to be reviewed or remade over and over and over. So the town hired a consultant to come in and look at buildings, essentially. What are the buildings and what needs to be done to move those buildings forward? And a lot of that work has been accomplished in the last 5 years. So using that as a fundamental base, we don't have to redo that work. We can use the experts that we have in the town that can help just keep those things rolling forward. And as things, new parts of buildings or new elements or aspects of buildings or assets come online, we add them to they will be added to the list then, would be the idea.
And then I also had a question. You were saying at the very beginning that you weren't speaking for the select board because this is not yet something that the select board is doing. So what is the group that's doing it, and how did they get chosen? And what was that?
I'll answer that real quick. Nobody was chosen here. The staff, in trying to address this issue, has been working on this. I've been invited to some of their meetings just to talk with them and understand what the processes are. It's really impressive to me how much there was to try to weed through and understand that has not made sense to anybody in town really for a long time. Sheila put in incredible numbers of hours to kind of get a grip on a lot of it and helped us understand a lot of it. But this plan going forward is really the product of these meetings with the staff figuring out. So it's not as if anybody was selected and anybody was excluded. The staff needs to be able to do this work for the town to support us all. And that's
that
what this was.
That was another question, was who are you referring to when you say staff?
In this case, it would be, it's Erica, Ellie, and Sheila were the ones that were putting this together. And Dan came in for a couple of the meetings because of his involvement in knowing the inventories in the highway and the town buildings and things like that.
And is there somebody on the staff who is really knowledgeable about buildings and what buildings need to be?
Dan.
Oh, I thought he was highway and building?
Well, he's not knowledgeable. We wouldn't use him to be knowledgeable about like the museum, or I don't mean like that, but I mean, but as far as I jumped to the highway building. Yeah.
I think I can illustrate something. So part of the next projects is going to be something for the Historical Society Museum. Obviously, if you drive by it, you can see that it needs paint, and if you look more closely, it also needs a little bit of carpentry done in relation to where it needs paint. There's some water damage on the exterior. And so I met with someone who is an expert, and I got a really robust list of how to put out an RFP for that. I didn't know that myself, but I found a resource for it, and that RFP is going to be forthcoming. So.
Can I just say one
Yes.
thing? And I think part of why I am involved is because since I started, I have repeatedly heard that we need to be more transparent and things need to be more easily trackable. And I think this system, especially the project worksheets, will help make that very clear. Not only to the public, but to myself in terms of where am I getting this money from that's going to pay for these bills? You know, so I'm hoping there'll be some more clarity around just our accounting in general.
a good point. That's a very good point. I think it's fair to say that you will discover in the next town report that there will be funds listed in that town report that maybe you've never seen before, accounting and because they just weren't ever provided. And we're trying to bring all that stuff forward and get a good, clear everything on the table so that we can begin to really make sense out of this. So there aren't questions. So that we don't want it should never appear as if we're attempting to hide anything from anyone or anything like that. Because that's absolutely not the case. Even when things aren't appearing in the last number of years, I would say it's a different issue than attempts to hide or obfuscate or anything like that.
And I do want to say, I appreciate what's being done.
Oh, great, thanks. It's a lot of work, and it's really been impressive to watch the staff tackle it. Yeah.
Andy Burrows from Sweet Pond Road. It seems to me that this is a very useful focus way of tracking the dynamic change where the needs of dealing with the assets of the town are constantly changing. And it all has to be tracked all the time.
Yeah.
What are the new needs? This building has got problems we didn't know. And we have to analyze how much it's going to cost, where the money's going to come from, is the planning, where is it in the whole planning process? And I really like the sense of flow rather than chopping everything up into little bits. This is the report for this year, and this month, and whatnot.
Right. We were talking today, and it seems very possible that if these reports come out, that you would be able to look back a few years and see we said we were going to do these things, but then we didn't do them because of the flexibility required. And we don't know how that's going to come out, but that's a possibility that some needs will suddenly appear great, especially with climate change and issues like that. We have different kinds of issues coming forward. I saw another hand over here.
Hi, so I'm Lyle Howe from Green River, from River Road also. I noticed that, are you changing the name from Capital Improvement Plan to the asset?
I won't say that we are changing it, it's being recommended. The select board will make that, if the select board will consider this and possibly make that change.
Because I noticed if you go online, the Capital Improvement Plan is, who's in charge of that would be the Financial Advisory Committee. And so by changing the name, does that exclude them, or will they be brought in?
Yeah, there's going to have to be some thinking about all of this to make sure that everything's lined up well. We haven't gotten there yet, but you're absolutely good point. Thank you. Okay, there's a hand on the screen. Let's see this. Jason Herron's hand is up. Jason?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep. Thank you.
So it seems to me that we have a capital needs assessment that was done. It outlined all of the issues that we had in all of our buildings. That was supposed to go over, I think, a 10-year period. We paid thousands of dollars for this. We have a capital policy, a Guilford policy, that says that we need to do all of these things that people are concerned with. So are we throwing away the capital needs assessment plan? One. Are we going to follow the policy as it's written? Two, because if we follow the policy, all of these questions would be resolved. So those are the two main ones right there. The real concern that I have, though, is that who was assigned to this committee? Because the capital needs assessment plan was given, and the capital need, well, I know, but the capital, we assigned a capital needs assessment. We have this plan, we established it, and then all of a sudden, we're not using it, we're not following it. So this Sheila Morse was, she was the first one. She's the capital improvement plan. She is the current chairperson of the Finance Advisory Committee. She has held that role since the inception of the committee, which includes all the 5 years that we're talking about previously. The Finance Advisory Committee has apparently been seeking this information for quite some time too, where this capital needs assessment plan is and where our capital program is. So who, if not the Finance Advisory Committee, should be creating these reports? And so Sheila was appointed to this position. She was a select board chairman when this policy was enacted. And now that we want to follow the policy 5 years later, we're going to have her solve the problem for us. It doesn't seem right. But to get back to my point, there's two things. We already have the capital needs assessment plan, which outlines every building, all of the equipment, everything. It says what we need to do to make sure that all of these buildings are up to par. We have not been following that for 5 years. Mm-hmm. And now you want to redo this. It doesn't make any sense. And then you're going to have the same people that created this policy who have been failing to fulfill it for the last 5 years, resolve it. It doesn't add up. So I'd like some answers on there. Are we going to just follow the policy as it's written now so that the select board has to show all of these things? And then will you do that retroactive for the last 5 years? Because the town of Guilford has no idea what their capital program has been doing, where this money has been for the last 5 years. I mean, there's been no money associated with the Guilford Library out of the capital program, but yet our town administrator, previous town administrator, said that's where all the money was coming from. So this seems like just a setup and a scam, really. We already have the capital needs assessment. We already have the plan. It's very outlined. It's detailed. Anyone wants to see it can go to the Guilford website and you can go and look. I mean, there are lists. You're talking about these Excel spreadsheets.
Jason.
But here, wait, it doesn't even stop there.
Thank you. We said at the beginning each person would have 3 minutes. I think you probably had more than 3 minutes. So thank you very much. I will respond to a couple of things that we responded to earlier. I'm not sure when you joined the meeting, but in fact, there was no assignment of this task. This has risen up out of the staff looking at these projects on behalf of the town. So it's not as if anyone was assigned to do this work. And no, we are not forgetting about the capital needs assessment. I said just a little while ago that that's fundamental bedrock work that was done for the town, but we're moving on to a different way of addressing that issue right now. And no, we're not forgetting about the work that has been delineated out in the plan. It's part of the process that's going to go forward as we continue with what we're now we hope to be calling an asset management program. That's what we're recommending to the select board. So I'll leave it at that right there. Thank you for your other comments. Yes.
Hi, my name is Paula Pettengill, Maple Hill Drive.
I'm sorry, what's your
Paula
name?
Pettengill.
Paula Pettengill, thank you.
Just a comment and a question. This sounds great to me. I have not personally been involved in the town financial stuff. I've been a resident though for a very long time. My background though is in financial accounting. And throughout my career, I have had the reason and need to manage projects, manage huge budgets, and report to a constituency who was genuinely interested in understanding it at a deep level, at a high level, and it just sounds like a great idea. I'm sitting here saying to myself, I'm surprised you haven't been doing it that way all along, because so it sounds like you're moving in whatever right direction. If I were the staff, I applaud you for saying we need to do something differently that makes sense, because you're town people, you know what the town needs and the questions they're posing to you. So I don't know if you can use Excel for this. So my question, or in all of this, is I'm curious: is the technology the town would have to invest in for this, or would you be able to use the tools you already have?
I think, if I can speak for it.
Yeah, I think
I'm not really the big technology person. That's Erica.
I think that we have the tools that we need to report
That's wonderful.
on this.
That's great.
Do have resources.
That's great.
So other people.
Good luck with the project. It sounds excellent.
Thank you.
Would you like to volunteer to help with
We do have a finance advisory committee that's looking for personnel, so there might be a way to get more involved if you were interested, anyone in town. So yeah. All right, is there other comments?
Yeah, I'm Miranda Porsche on Guilford, Packer Corners Road. And I wondered whether our staff and presumably the Select Board and the Finance Advisory Committee, do we anticipate that we're going to need professional help beyond the capacity of the people that we already have working on this?
We've talked about that some. I mean, there are a few, I think that as we go forward, this project will probably reveal itself to us. That's how I see it. We are looking at the idea, we have some ARPA dollars the Select Board set aside for a grant writer to help us with this kind of work. It's not implemented yet, but we have that earmarked. There's also the possibility of, both these staff members, in case you don't all know, are new to the town. They've been working in the town for less than 6 months.
I think you should be helpful if some people should identify
who they are.
Roles.
Yeah, this is Ellie Mayanen, and she's our town treasurer. And it's fantastic that she's here. It's Erica Elder, and she's our town administrator.
I think we should give them a round of applause.
And Sheila Morris is our assistant town administrator. We're benefiting. The town of Guilford is benefiting from what I would call a fresh look at processes that have been going on for a long time, and we're getting the benefit of their very reasonable, logical thinking about some of the some of the accesses and some of the access points and some of the deliverables and the non-deliverables that we've produced over the last while, and we're getting a different look at it. That's partly what's making things feel different right now. So it's a good moment for us.
Steve Lemke, River Road. What's the next what's the process to get this from 3 or 4 people proposing something to the point where it's actually in place, now and forever?
I'll speak to that. I'll say what I think. I think that you've been talking about it. It seems that what we need to do is actively activate, we need to activate a list of next projects that would form what we would call the beginnings of a plan, a proposed plan. Then the Select Board would need to adopt this asset management plan for the next year. And that would probably start setting the whole thing into motion. Some of the things, the green items that you saw, if we would just put all those together, that could be it. We probably need to do some more thinking. They need to do some more thinking about this and really make it a good list. But I would say we're not too far. It's not going to happen in 2 weeks, but we're not too far from making this work.
I'm sorry, who brought that up? Was that
Steve?
Steve, okay. Thanks, Steve.
Yes, Connie.
I would just like to express my hope that when this work is being put out to bid, or however you're deciding who gets to do it, that we give a priority if there is somebody in town, resident of Guilford, who has that expertise, that we use them.
For the various projects, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I don't know if that's I don't,
That is
yeah.
part of our procurement policy.
There's a procurement policy.
We have a procurement policy that so yeah, I think it'd be good to read that. If we would all get familiar with that, we can understand. I'm not sure that we can, I'm not sure whether we can stipulate that. Yeah.
It's given, it's a top priority, it's preference.
To have that.
But if
So it's part of our situation. Okay. What else? Other thoughts? Are there other hands on the screen?
Jason hasn't spoken.
All right. Jason, 3 minutes.
I don't need 3 minutes. I just one question here. So we have a capital program and budget policies that was put in play in 2018. Sheila Morris was one of the person who signed that. Are we going to follow that policy?
No, I think what we're saying at the beginning is, in spirit, yes, but we're not going to be using that policy, I think, is how I would describe it. Huh?
We're using the policy.
The policy, I'm sorry, the plan.
We're
Yeah.
revisiting.
Okay, the policies will exist, yes. I'm sorry, The policies,
Well,
yes.
so I don't understand, because if you're following the policy, then there's no reason to have this meeting. It's all been solved. You just have to follow the plan. The policy has this all dictated, what you need to do, when you need to do it, how it needs to be done. So if you follow the policy, then we don't need to have this discussion. Again, we've already done this. The problem we're having as a town is that the select board and our finance advisory committee has not been following this policy. It says clearly that this policy, everything that everyone's asking in this meeting right now, is resolved in this policy. You just have to read it. You don't even have to read but 3 paragraphs and it will solve all of these problems. So if we're going to follow the policy, then we can end this. I don't need to stay on for any more of this meeting. So if you tell me as a select board chairman that you are now going to follow the capital program and budget policy as is written, or you're going to amend it, that's all I need to know.
I'll say it this way, Jason, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, the spirit, like I said again, the spirit of the policy is in place.
Look, this isn't about spirits, man. This is about a policy.
Jason, please don't interrupt me. I think we'll probably be looking and see whether or not we need to adjust anything at this point. We haven't done that work just yet. That's something the select board would need to do together. We have not met about this, so this will be something we'll be looking at. Thank you. Gordon.
So Gordon Little, Collier Road. I think the 2 things that I want to say is, one, I think what you've laid out here makes a lot of sense. The piece, and Jason comes around to this discussion, the accountability piece of tracking has not been done as well as it could have been done. I was on the select board. I have been a member of the finance advisory committee. It wasn't done as well as it could have been done.
Correct.
Things were done. The plan was followed. It wasn't executed on the backside as well as it should have been.
Correct.
Bottom line. So I think what you're addressing here in this meeting does make sense. I think what you're talking about makes a lot of sense on the backside especially, because I think that's the piece we've been missing, the accuracy as good as it could be. It hasn't been as good as it can be. So I just wanted you to know that, and to you guys, I think you've done a great job, drawing this up and taking the plans that we have already in place, because we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're basically building on a foundation that is there.
And yes, and globalizing a bit more,
exactly,
bringing more of our assets into the picture.
Understood.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if we were to follow the policy as it's written right now, it would exclude some elements of our community, which that's not what we want to do. That's why I speak about the spirit of the thing.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes, Veranda?
I'm Veranda still. And I noticed that we added roads to our assets. And so would that be Dan and the highway department reviewing the well-being of all of the roads and setting priorities about what the needs are?
Yeah, certainly a lot of what's happening is Dan will probably look at us and go, well, duh, that's what I do every single day.
Right.
Of course it is. But there may be some major projects that are out of the ways that we need to plan for, and we need to think about more as a larger community rather than just general upkeep and so forth like that. So yes, it would be Dan, I think, that would be responsible for those. Yeah.
It's on. Ann Ryder is on Zoom, and Jason.
All right, Ann Ryder.
I just want to echo what Gordon said. I think this doesn't change either the policy or the capital improvement plan. I think what it does is add a layer of transparency and clear explanation of where things are in the pipeline. And as you said, Gordon, you talked about on the back end, once things have actually been procured and are in operation, keeping track of them. So I think this is really an excellent addition to what we have in place already, and really creates a fuller picture of both our assets and how they're being managed.
Thank you. I think one of the big aims here is we've heard a lot in the last year. I certainly have, as a select board member, heard a lot about trust, accountability, openness, all of those kinds of issues. This is an attempt to move into that realm more and engage more of the community in those kinds of conversations. I want the community to understand that we're all working for the good of the town. We really are. That's why we're select board members, that's why staff members are here. We're all doing this work because we care about Guilford. And so to that extent, we want you to guide us if we're not doing things well or right, but you also need to understand how it is we're thinking about some of these things as well. So that's partly why we have this meeting tonight.
Oh, I have another question if other people don't.
Thank you.
Were there other
Go
people?
ahead. Oh, there. Okay, one more and then we'll.
Oh, okay. Do other towns have around here, are they already doing this, or is this something, I mean, this particular flow of processing work, is this sort of common for other towns of 2,100 around here?
I don't know the answer to that. I can say, maybe you others have comments, but I can say that the looking that I have done revealed that everyone's addressing these issues. Towns are addressing these issues, but maybe not in exactly the same way we are. For instance, if you were in Vernon and you read their town report, you'd see the entire inventory of every single aspect of Vernon's, and it takes up pages in their town report. You see what they're dealing with on a regular basis every single year. We don't do that in Guilford. That's an example. No. All right, I see Jason's hand is up. Jason?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our capital improvement plan and budget, it says you need to have a proposed method of financing indicating the amount proposed to be financed by direct budgetary appropriations or duly established reserve funds, the amount estimated to be received from the federal or state government, the amount to be financed by impact fees, and the amount to be financed by the issuance of debt obligations showing the proposed types or types of obligations together with the period of probable usefulness for which they are proposed to be issued. So our policy covers all of this. So now we're talking, we got previous years, 5 years. Are we going to get any sort of report on what happened to our capital improvement plan over the last 5 years? Where did every penny from the capital improvement plan come from and go to for the last 5 years, and how was it distributed? Because if you were following this plan, we wouldn't have this meeting. We'd all be just reading the plan and showing, hey, this is when we voted on this. This is when the town voted on this. This is where they thought they were getting grants from. All of this is already solved in our plan. So trying to rewrite it is really just a way to get out of trying to fix the real problem here. Is that we have the same people. You want to change something, but you have the same people looking at what the problems are. Our policy just needs to be followed. And our select board is not following it. Our finance advisory committee is not doing the reports so the select board can even assess it. So are we going to get this retroactive report? Are we going to get something from the last 5 years, from when this policy was enacted? We don't have one of these annual reports. The select board is required every year to give us this report. Can we have one of them?
So,
Jason, this is Ellie. I don't know if you can see me. I can't necessarily answer your question about the last 5 years, but what's behind your question is one of the reasons we're doing this, is because we have heard that taxpayers want more clarity about how money is spent and more accountability. And I think through this system, and it's not really rocket science, quite frankly, but it's just a way of tracking our revenues for all the projects that we do, and tracking the expenses for all those projects.
Ma'am, I'm just asking if you're going to follow the policy. Because if you follow the policy,
No, you're not. You're not only asking that.
If they follow the policy, then it's simple. So are we going to follow the policy? Because you can show all this and that, the other thing, but if we just follow the policy, it's resolved.
You know what? I'm going to say I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Okay.
Good.
We do need to follow the policy.
Let's follow the policy. So you want to follow the policy? You would like to follow the policy, is what you're saying?
Can I answer the
We
question?
will be following the policy.
He's done.
Yeah, I think.
Your time's up, Jason. Thank you very much.
I just, okay, I just want to say, we are going to follow the policy. We're going to look at how we can improve it, perhaps, but we are going to follow the policy. The things that you just read all make great sense. And we need to do a better job tracking the revenue and expenses. And I think this project worksheet in particular is going to help us go back anytime somebody has a question about the revenue sources, however many there are, and all the expenses. We can go back then and pull up that information a lot more easily than trying to look through the whole general ledger. We're going to have a particular.
I know, that's awesome. That's why this policy was established.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. And
That's why it was
Ryder?
established, but so my question was,
Jason?
my question was, are we gonna go
Jason?
retroactive? Are we gonna be able to see this
Jason?
from years ago? You didn't
Jason?
answer my.
Thank you. Ann Ryder?
I'm just going to say, I think it's really unfortunate. I really appreciate the efforts both the staff and the select board have made to add information and add clarity that will help address policy, maybe shortfalls, as Gordon had said, where things weren't tracked after the fact. But I think the amount of interrupting and attacking makes it really hard to attend this meeting. And I'm sorry that that is allowed to happen, where as people are giving responses, they are being interrupted and attacked. And I'm just really sorry that's being allowed to happen.
Is there any other comment this evening anybody would like to make? All right. All right. If there's anything else.
Thank you very much.
It's a continuing discussion. The select board will be addressing all of this and looking at it as we go along. Thank you very kindly.